I'm your host and MC, James Ross, and this is Quantum Leopard. This episode we have the wonderful Declan Kennedy. This set was recorded on the 10th of February 2024 by Aniruddh Ojha, who also did the editing. It was all done at Bold, and the interview took place on the 23rd of October 2025. Enjoy!
Thank you very much. It's here for James. Thank you very much. In case you're wondering what happened to Margaret Thatcher's hair, mystery solved. My thanks to James for letting me do this slot a little bit earlier so I can go do my starring role at Dream Boys. See you later, Catherine. I've got to say, I'm just, anyone else intrigued by this? Does anyone else feel like we're at a retirement party for this monolith? I'm presented with a carriage clock and say, well done, you've many years' service being unscrutable and unknowing. That's and I don't know if it's something to do with being under street level, but I always get that feeling if I'm in the basement. Does anyone else feel like we're survivors of something? Just any minute now, Morgan Freeman's going to come out and give a speech. Says, you cannot crush the indomitability of the human spirit. I will say at the start that I've been keeping a cocked ear on everybody all night, and the more I hear about sex, the less I like the sound of it. My relative inexperience leads me to a question I would like to put to, and I appreciate this will be for anyone with a green badge, but I just want to ask you guys, did you know that the human ears are an erogenous zone? Did you guys know that? Yeah, no, I didn't know that. I found that out during a haircut. So I should really start formally by saying, hello, it's great to be here, by which I mean I hate being human. I wish I was a kettle. And just to tell you a bit about myself, I once saw a man hoover up a wasp, so you can't say I haven't lived. I suppose I really should apologise for the way I look, because there's no way to make this palatable. I have tried. At the minute, I look like Peter Griffin if he's directed by Christopher Nolan. And I have gone the clean-shaven look, cropped hair, no beard, and I really picked the wrong moment in history to look like Joss Whedon and Louis C.K. And I've tried different combinations of hair and facial hair. The trouble is I've got high blood pressure, so I'm red-faced. I look so gammony, and my face hair comes out white. That I tried sideburns, and it was a look I can really only describe as Brexit Wolverine. It was like, leave means leave. It was that sort of look. I've sort of added a tie to the ensemble, and now I think a very specific look, scientist who realises his error in the third act. About 75 minutes in, I sort of look down and go, oh my God, I was so preoccupied about whether we could, I didn't stop to think about whether we should, and then Velociraptor finishes me off, so that's the look I've got at the minute now. Just actually, a little bit of shout out to people with green badges, make a little bit of noise. Brilliant stuff. I want to do something. I want to request something from you, a little bit of call and response. So we're going to divide the audience down the middle. We're going to, let's say here, the equator will be here. Don't worry, I'm not going to make you fight each other. Yet. But this side of the room, anyone with a green badge, shout, say. Say. Brilliant. And this side of the room, just as loud, anyone with a green badge, shout, ton, spelt T-U-N, ton. Ton. Say. Ton. Say. Ton. Say. Ton. Say. Ton. Thank you. I just wanted to worry everyone out there. That's... people at the bus stop were looking across going, Satan, elephant and castle, right? Cost of living's hit him hard. That's, anger is an energy, Anger is an energy. That's what John Lydon sang in the 1980s, isn't it? Anger is an energy. It's not a renewable form of energy, though, is it, John? That's why we have wind farms, not rage pipes. I don't want to be indelicate, but does anyone else feel like they've been forced to think about the king's prostate quite a lot? I just really resent having to hear that phrase on the news, because apart from anything else, you know a year from now it's going to be a Netflix series with Colin Firth, isn't it? That's just... It's just... his fingers are so big. Why can't he do his own... Anyway, it doesn't... Next series of The Crown's going to look like a David Cronenberg film. I don't know how stressful. I don't know about anybody else. It's like, why do we still have a monarch? Do you know what I mean? It's just 2024. Why do we need a king? It's like finding out NASA have a wizard on the payroll. It's like, I know, I can't have a shuttle launch without Gandalf. Do your stuff, Gandalf. Oh. Expelliarmus. Yes, nerds, I mixed two franchises. Deal with it. It's fine. I'm just being deliberately obtuse there, nerds. Don't worry, I'm one of you. I'm a fully paid-up card-carrying word. No, surely not. Yes, I am. It's true. I did that purely for comment. I know how irritating it is if you're a nerd and somebody makes a reference and they deliberately get it wrong. It's irritating. So chill. I'm one of you, yeah? Relax. May the force be with you. Oh, that's the worst thing that's been said here tonight, is it? That's fine. But I really do. The thing that I'm not looking forward to is just for all sorts of reasons. I really couldn't handle another royal funeral because the last one was disturbing. That queue to see the... I mean, why? I must queue and see the Queen's get over. Why? You want to make sure she's dead? What's the... If you're that desperate, take a steak and a clove of garlic with you. It's not, you know... I don't know if you know this, that queue got so huge that it actually became a singularity pulled in other queues. So there's a use you were there too. I had people reaching the head of that queue going, well, I only came to Argos for an air fryer. I don't know what this is. Anyway, it's nice to be out of North London because it is a... Anyone else in from North London? Green badge people? Yeah, quite a few people. It is pretentious, let's be honest. It's in the local park, recreation ground. There's a little sign up that says there's no such thing as the dog poo fairy. I know. All those years I spent putting dog poo into my pillow, wasted. But obviously, you may have picked up by now, I'm not just based in Northern. I'm from the north of England, and I know even amongst this audience there'll be people going, "Oh my goodness, a Northerner! Didn't they cross the Bering Straits all with the Australopithecus apes?" So I know some of us have degrees and have seen manufactured glass. It's incredible. I appreciate I don't sound very Northern. That's because I've lived here since 2001, and that's 2 decades of people basing their assessment of your intellectual capability on how I pronounce the word cupboard. So. Tend to lose my accent quite fast, but I will say yes, I'm originally from Manchester. I say originally from Manchester. I'm just from Manchester. No need for originally there. Well, I'm from Manchester, but I decided to be from somewhere else for a while. But I think the hardest part is the fact that we now have to revere Andy Burnham. Yeah, that's a very knowing laugh over there. That's. Because I grudgingly have to admit he's done some good work. But I remember when he was running for Labour leadership and he uttered this phrase, in the Labour Party, a businessman is just as much a hero as a nurse. I know, Andy. I tell you what, Andy, I know who I want carrying out my prostate exam, and it's not Alan Sugar. That's... although, in fairness, Alan Sugar does do this a lot, doesn't he? So... he might be good at it. I'd watch The Apprentice if that's how it ended every week. Just, you're fired, mate. In it goes. So, thank you very much for the opportunity, Lord Sugar. But then he'd find something early, wouldn't he? He'd find something, somebody would be cured, and he'd be a hero again. The circle is complete. That was quite a valedictory opening of that drink there. Who'd have thought my set would end with a toast for Alan Sugar? I'm getting a little slide. Just want to check. I'm going to check sort of how much time I have left, which I appreciate. It's a very rude thing to do, and I feel like as a comedian, I'm one of the few people who has license to do that. No other performer will be able to do that. You know, it's actors can't do that. You'd feel pretty put out if halfway through an X-Men film, like Ian McKellen just went, "Oh, this is going on a bit, isn't it?" Tell you what, there's one fucking genre that needs it. It's those films, isn't it? It's Infinity Wars, 3 hours. That's infinity for my bladder, pal. That's. Green badge people, any superhero fans in before I go? Yeah, I love them too, but I'm sick of the films, and I'm sort of the concept is ineluctably flawed, isn't it, with superhero films? Because they're always running into problems because of their mild-mannered alter ego. There's always having to sort of mild-mannered Clark Kent, mild-mannered Peter Parker, always having to explain where they've been and what they've been doing. You think surely the most effective alter ego for a superhero is a belligerent drunk. Because then you never have to explain anything, do you? It's like, why were you running around in spandex in a cape? She left me. Okay, fine. I'm going to go now. I will say have a wonderful evening. Oh, well, God, I went all local radio then. I'm sorry, Joe. So you've got a wonderful evening's entertainment. Time's just coming up to 1 a.m. Tonight's discussion, trees, should they be allowed to marry? Here's Sade with Your Love is King. Good night.
And that was Declan Kennedy. So that was a lovely set. Thanks so much. Lovely start there with some self-facing comments and discussion of the monolith. Do you feel like more stages could do with a monolith?
That's a very good question. I feel like more stages have a monolith on when I'm performing sometimes. That doesn't always go over as well.
So, like, commenting on the room and building on the sets that have gone before, I think is a really excellent technique for, like, putting an audience at ease, because it establishes that A, you're paying attention, and B, you're good enough to, like, make up material on the fly, on the spot. So is this something you often do or always do to open a set? And do you have any particular, like, techniques or tips for younger comics, things that you do that you employ when you're doing that?
Wow. The concept of the younger comics comes to me for wisdom. It's quite something. It's not. I don't know if it's something I always do. I feel like maybe I do always do it. I feel like it's something I do quite a lot, purely because, as you say, it's. I think for an audience, particularly the kind of comedy I aim for, tends to be quite abstract. So if you're able to say something about the room in front, and I will say that over the years, I've kind of built up a little library of things I can say, just on the basis of having gigged in so many rooms where there's odd things. You know, there's you know, I thought, there's a disco ball. I know I've got something I can say about that, and you know, there's an awful lot of rooms with tiny radiators. For some reason, radiators are like four inches long, and you feel like, what? Why this specific part of the room has to be heated? I don't know. So
I suppose it's a radiator that small. It's not really a radiator as much as an inch or like radiate. They have a really big one, and that's the radiators. Yeah. All right. Okay. Sorry. I'm doing it now, and I'm not even in that room. My radiators are quite a medium size, I'd say. So not something I can comment on really. Okay. So you've got like some sort of like pre-scripted kind of bits and go-tos for like the common unusual. Do you have any ways of approaching like, okay, I've come to this room and it's got this particular object in it? Do you do like a sort of an instant, like a mind map of like, okay, here's this thing, what are my associations with it, how can I play off that? Or is there another way that you approach it?
Gosh, I don't know if it's a conscious process as such. It's or conscious process, I should say, as such. It's more sort of, I don't know, certain things leap out at me. For instance, if I'm in a pub with where there's pictures on the walls, I always have a little look if they're around the performance area, because you think, well, it'd be good to make reference to them and give them some sort of spurious context. Or you mentioned it just a minute ago about things maybe for other comics. I always think check out the ceiling, because that's a very simple thing you can say to an audience is, hey, what's going on with this? And then they'll look up and they'll go, yeah, what is going on with that? And if you've got something silly you can say about it. Because a lot of places have weird ceilings, I think, is the thing.
Yeah.
And
also, it's not going to be a thing that you're automatically looking at,
no.
right? Like you're looking forward, you're looking down, but up quite seldom. So that is an unexplored angle. That's interesting. It's just struck me that what you're basically doing there is sort of crowd work with entities that can't talk back. That's only just struck me. I mean, is that I mean, do you do crowd work? I mean, it doesn't. I think of you as being a sort of like a one and a bit line merchant, right? Like you will do little bits and they're joined together, and there's sort of a loose sort of a tonal linkage of whimsy, but it's not necessarily like okay, well, I'm going to do a 10-minute set about electrical outlets or whatever it is, right? Like it's not like you've got a set defined topic; it's more defined by tone. That's not something that I think necessarily gels with crowd work. But is crowd work something that you do? Is this a substitute for it?
Well, quite possibly. I mean, I have done crowd work, and certainly in sets where maybe I have gone to the audience for something. Occasionally, I will get the audience involved, as that clip bears out, for little bits and bobs, get them to shout something unusual. That sometimes will lead somewhere.
Yeah.
And I have MC'd as well,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm sort of well versed in the thing. I'm not going to say, well, what do you do? Where are you from? How did you hear about the gig and all of that? But sometimes things will come out of that audience interaction where you think, well, I might just pursue this for a minute. Not to give away too much about my gag, because I did have a gag about one of my opening lines is, I once saw a man hoover up a wasp, so you can't say I haven't lived.
Yeah,
and
that's in
twice,
this set as well. I quite enjoy that one.
that's in the set. I think you might be right, actually. Yes, it's sort of, but it's this has happened really only once, that somebody said to me, "Hang on, what do you mean?" I said, and I had to explain that this is a genuine thing. That yes, actually, I have a friend of mine. I was very phobic about wasps when I was young. A friend of mine surrounded his house a wasp, and he said, "I'm fed up of you caring from this wasp," and he literally got a vacuum cleaner and sucked it in. And it led to a whole discussion of like, well, what would that be like for the wasp? For the wasp, that would be the equivalent of one of those hillbillies who claim to have had UFO abductions.
Ah, yeah.
But the wasp will go back to the wasp's nest and go, "Oh, you'll never guess what happened to me." It's like, "Oh, here comes Zeke with his more tales of aliens coming to this realm where there's lots of fluff and dust." And it's like, "Oh, come on, Zeke, we know you're making this up." And no one will believe him. He'll become like the sort of, the kind of flat earther of the wasp community. So it's if the opportunity comes up, I do enjoy. Somebody else actually, when I did that joke, put their hand up. It's a very sweet way to heckle. And I said, "Yes, you have a question." And I wish I'd thought of a better response to this. He said, "My dad did that, and he proudly came back with a whole Hoover bag full of wasps." And I was too stunned to sort of unpack that and go, "Well, okay, how did that happen?"
Yeah.
But it was just, I didn't think that was a common experience, but apparently it is.
No, I mean, you never know how relatable your material is going to be, and that's fascinating, because what you've done there is you've taken an extremely specific experience of wasp hoovering that you would assume is like more or less unique. I mean, they're not uncommon objects, but the commonality of the two of them in the same place being involved with each other is the odds against that must be staggering. And yet you found two people in your audiences that have had that relatable experience. Wow, that is.
I think I don't think if I could be said to have any kind of technique, it would be taking those highly specific personal things and depriving them of context.
Yeah,
and I think that's acknowledging then that these things sound very weird if you aren't experiencing it.
I mean, I suppose that's the way of applying a degree of, and I apologise for using the word again, whimsy to it, is that you've got, like, everyone's experience is unique and particular to them, but the thing that makes it seem like mundane, everyday, or banal and tedious is the fact that it's you who's experiencing it, and it's got the context that puts that experience in its place. Whereas if you shear it of that context, then it suddenly becomes like weird, strange, esoteric, and a subject for surrealism, and that's a jumping off point. So in some ways it's almost the opposite of observational humor, in the sense of, like, you're not reminding people of experiences that they've already had, or common reference points. You're taking things that they have experienced and then divorcing them of the reference point and divorcing them of the context and taking it out of that.
The Verfremdung effect.
The what effect? I've never heard that term before, so educate me, Declan. What's that?
Well, you've just reminded me. One of the few things I retained from A-level theatre studies is very Brechtian, isn't it? It's the notion of the nearest translation is the alienation effect. His sort of thesis was, in order to get people to be more aware of kind of how complicit they are in the system, you would take familiar things and do them in a very exaggerated or odd way, so that people become alienated from them. So his whole style of theatre was, potentially quite ordinary stories, but presented either without a conclusion or done in a really sort of theatrical and vaudevillian way. So they'd be enormous fun to watch, but they'd also be kind of exaggerated and and there'd be no realism in them, and that was a way of kind of his way of communicating social realism in the sense of exposing the machinery and this now seems very strange to you, but it's something you take for granted every day. And so I don't know. Maybe I'm more politically aware than I thought with all of this. But it just struck me when you said that. I thought, oh yeah, that's a good example. Is and then again, this is one that stayed in my mind. Is a way of describing a Volkswagen is a wingless aircraft that crawls along the ground.
Ooh,
which
nice.
Is
okay.
Technically correct, but also makes you think, what? That's suddenly it becomes quite weird. A Volkswagen Beetle becomes quite a weird thing if you consider it in that way. So.
Yes, but I mean, it's like they're sort of descriptions of things of like explain it to me like I'm 5, right? Like you take the core elements of what you're trying to explain and you make it seem bizarre and almost parodic by distilling it down to its essence and shearing it of the social context of like the adult world would place on a thing. That's fascinating. Yeah. Okay. Yeah,
I mean, it doesn't always find favour with an audience. A piece of material I've been trying to work up for years is does anyone else find sex terrifying?
Yeah.
Because you're physically merging with another person. And even at my advanced years, I cannot... If you think about that on those terms, it's like, that's something out of a Cronenberg film. Why... I mean, I know it's fun to do, but why? It's just when you think about it, it's like, well, that's not good. But that's one journey the audience won't go on with me, I don't think.
It is tricky. So I find that you need to have an audience like as like straight white male comic of a certain age. Like I find that I need like a certain, and who's not sort of particularly conventionally attractive, not bad looking by any stretch, but like I'm not leading with looks. I'm leading with charm. Thank you very much. Right, but like. With that stage persona, I think you do need a lot of audience buy-in before you start talking about something like sex to stop the audience feeling uncomfortable. It's definitely something you need to like ease into, and they need to be able to acknowledge you as being a sexual being that can comment on this without it being intimidating or alienating or off-putting. So I know. I wonder if that's maybe part of it. And
I think it's but very similar. I'm not going to beat about the bush. I'm not to the top of anyone's dreamboat list, so maybe it's just you do have to be handsome to pull these things off.
Maybe that's it with that bit of material. How long have you been going, and did you always kind of like have this approach to it?
I've been going more years than I care to remember, and I'm very, very slow and not particularly pushy enough, probably. But yes, I do have that thought. I mean, when I started out, even that long ago, I did have the thought go through my mind as well. I am a white, middle-class, university-educated male. If I'm going to do this, I better have something to say, and that means trying to dwell on things that aren't, as much as I have material about stuff that's in front of you, things that aren't to do with my life, or there's not much to say anyway. I'm fairly monastic, so I had to really, by necessity, kind of concentrate on odd or abstract things. And that was my sort of experience of comedy growing up. I don't know how it was for other people. And it's only when you start doing this you realise it wasn't a common experience. That so the comedy I enjoy and still go back to is the stuff about big ideas and concepts, rather than and this isn't in any way to denigrate any comedians doing stuff about relationships, but you do want to say to them, look, we kind of still have nuclear weapons. I feel like that's more important than your breakup. Not
Well, I mean, look. What breakup is more explosive than that occurs during nuclear fission, right? Like,
that is the ultimate split there of actual protons and electrons. I think there's no
in terms of your nerdiness, so like tell me more about that. So what are your particular special interests, and is there anything you'd recommend that young people listening might not have come across?
Well, I mean, from experience, I don't know whether young people will be interested in that kind of things. I guess the two main areas are sort of comedy of a certain era and kind of British science fiction on television of a certain era.
Okay.
Which at one point seemed like people maybe don't realise in this country how close the relationship between science fiction and comedy has been for many years. Just as a tangent to that, we would not have had the Daleks had Tony Hancock not fired one of his writers.
Oh,
because
okay. Tell me this story. I'm
the
interested.
creator of the Daleks, Terry Nation, started out as a comedy writer. He was employed by Spike Milligan, and he was writing for Tony Hancock. Got offered via his agent sort of 7 episodes of a new children's science fiction serial, and he went, no thanks, I'm doing this. Then got fired by Tony Hancock, and then went back to his agent and said, oh, I need money. Is that offer still on the table? And they went, yeah. And he's the quote from Terry Nation is that I took the thief and took the money and flew like a thief in the night, or something like that, where he just went, right, I'm just going to do this. So he wrote this script, and he sort of came up with the notion of the Daleks, and then sort of that became, I think, his mortgage for the next however many years of his life.
Yeah.
So that it's kind of I always think there's quite a close relationship between comedy and science fiction in this country. Sometimes quite literally, obviously, you've got Red Dwarf and Hitchhiker's Guide being the thing that really motivated me to do anything creative. But there are, I don't know how deep a dive you want me to go on.
Go for it. Go deep.
But go deep. The deepest thing, the benchmark, I think, of how obscure are your tastes in British science fiction, hoary old science fiction in the 70s and 80s. Do you remember a thing called 00? You probably won't.
No, I do not remember a thing called 00.
It took me years to find out what this was, even with the internet, because I completely misremembered who was in it.
Right.
It was a one-off musical, sort of high concept science fiction play from the early days of Channel 4. Hey, already sounds great.
Yeah.
But the reason I couldn't find it, I thought it had Wayne Sleep. It was actually Mike Batt. He'd sort of written and recorded and was the main star of this thing. But it was for some reason, like a lot of things in the 80s, had the quality of a fever dream, because they'd gone for this chessboard pattern for absolutely everything. The costumes, the sets, the backdrops, everything had a sort of chessboard pattern, which is never explained in the whole thing. But it was, as is the law for science fiction of that era, it was quite downbeat, and the plot concerned the future where emotions are outlawed, and I think Mike Batt's character commits a heinous crime of falling in love with someone, I know, and is then lobotomized for his trouble.
Right.
And that's sort of the long and short. There is a twist as well, but I don't want to give that away in case you want to sit through the whole thing, which is only 40 minutes but feels longer. Because I managed to find it. I finally located it on YouTube, and it's it's maybe hasn't stood the test of time terribly well, but it's one of those things of this. The one of the things about it was that it was meant to be broadcast in stereo, and that went wrong, so they repeated it a few days later. I saw it on both occasions, and I still think I must have been about one of 10 people in the UK who actually saw this. So it's like, and science fiction, as I'm sure you realise, is not, even now, is still not, of a certain vintage anyway, is still not held in high esteem. So anything like that you saw as a kid with no video recorder or anything like that, you really seized on and went back, filed it way in the back of your mind. So it's that sort of thing. I guess, is there anything that I suppose I should home in on the one thing I've written a set about, actually, which is a science fiction series from, it kind of straddled the end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s. A series called Blake 7.
Blake 7. I knew you were going to say that. Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Go on. Yeah.
Right. And that's and I guess that's the reason why I've tried to sort of home in on that. I absolutely adore that program. I think it's brilliant for all its shortcomings. And when I did a set, I've done sets about it. And the one thing I always mention is, if you've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, especially if you've seen Firefly and Serenity, then you've seen Blake 7. It is very much that. A bunch of anti-heroes fighting the man. But I feel like it's what elevates it. Weirdly, it's hugely popular in its day. It's kind of been forgotten by British science fiction, and kind of still kind of looked down on. It was famous for two things, really: having possibly the worst special effects. Even at the time, people, and that was when there was pretty shonky effects about. But also the best sort of writing and characters, and quite politically literate, and for a piece of science fiction that's set in space, it is remarkably sort of close to our own reality. There's no lightsabers or anything like that, and the regime that is in power set, when you learn about their brainwashing techniques, you think, wow, that is actually quite close to stuff that goes on in Chile and behind the Iron Curtain at the time. but that, again, to stress the comedy connection, there's a writer on that who, again, had started out sort of writing gags. And he wound up being the sort of custodian of it, the script editor, wrote some of the best moments, some of the best lines, some of the best episodes that are clever, politically literate, and can have all the balance of pulp adventure and thought that really marbled that whole series. And written with the rhythm of a sitcom. So even when it's not being funny, it has that rhythm of setup, feedline, punchline, setup. So he's really good at doing all the exposition, which is a real bugbear with science fiction, of dispensing the information without it being awkward or laughable. Also responsible for one of the best exchanges outside of a sitcom, I think, that still makes me laugh is they didn't do aliens very often in Blake 7. They sort of show up at one point for the season cliffhanger. And they're a MacGuffin, really. They're there to sort of change the status quo, so the next series is kind of different. But they sort of confrontation. An alien somebody gets shot and turns into an alien, and one of the characters says, "Oh my God, what is it?" Another character says, "Unfriendly," which is fortunate, really. He'd be difficult to love. And I just thought such a perfect line that it was. It's such a wonderful moment. It's one of those things like, if that was in a sitcom, that would be brilliant. That would be one of the best remembered lines.
Yeah, lovely. Well, on the subject of well-written lines, so I really enjoyed your bit about the dog poo theory. So I think this is a nice couple of little lines, a classic Declan Kennedy bit. You're taking a form of words or an observation, working it backwards with a half twist. So do you have a particular process for writing sequences like that? Do you have a pattern, set modes that you go for, or you just wander around, wait for inspiration to strike you like an errant brick?
Gosh, I don't know if it is a conscious process. I did worry with that joke that it sounded like, when you have a joke, you feel like somebody must have said this at some point. It feels like, to me anyway, I don't know if it's a very obvious observation to make about that, because they're still there, all those signs.
I think it varies by local authority which ones are going to put up and reference specifically the dog poo theory. So your competition for that is comedians that have also been in like parks in that specific area, northwest London. Yeah,
I suppose so. But I'm sure it's one of those things. I used to have a joke about. It's quite a complicated setup. Sort of buying Easter at Easter, letting my cousin's kids watch Alien as a treat, and then the next day's game of Hunt the Egg didn't go quite as well as planned. I felt I saw someone make that similar joke on the internet. I thought, well, it is probably quite an obvious joke to make. So, and I don't know if I've seen. I was worried that it's one of those bits where I think I'm sure someone must have done that, but I don't know. It felt just like there's nothing in that sign that says "pick up your dog poo." I think it's more the sort of what's not said sometimes leaps out at you. It's sort of it's a way of indicating to people that you've got to pick up your. But it's it doesn't actually say. So if you're very literal minded, you might look at that and go, "What does this mean? Is it like tooth fairy?" I don't know. So I don't know if that's in any way answers your question. But
no, that's fine. Don't worry. It's interesting stuff. Yeah, I mean, the bit about sort of like, there is this thing of like, is this plagiarism or is this parallel thinking? And there are only so many ideas, but the question is like, how do they hit against each other, and then how do you present them? And do you present them in your specific style and in character? And that's what makes them sufficiently different. And I think provided you've not like seen the set of somebody else doing the same joke and absorbed that and then represented it with limited additional input, I think you're kind of fine. I mean, particularly in the case these days of like, everyone's on social media, everyone's microblogging jokes, and there's only so many different ways that you can attack a topic, and people will have come up with all of the possible takes on a current news event within 48 hours. Like, the question is, who did it most prominently? Who has the biggest megaphone while they're doing it? I think
it's also a question of because I understand that I have done sort of topical writing, and it is a question of who comes up the quickest, but also the best version of that joke, the most economical version, the one that uses the least amount of words. Yes, I think is the ideal that you're going for with any comedy, particularly topical comedy. I think is the one where it's really important that it isn't waffly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that's something that a lot of comedy writers could do with absorbing, particularly people who are sort of early career, is, you do want to be getting to the punchline. Most of the time, you want to get there as quickly as possible. Sometimes you are telling a long rambling story and you need bridging jokes and blah, blah, blah. But usually, if you're doing something that is relatively short, that is meant to be a line to 3 lines, you want the quickest A to B to C that you can possibly get. So I too am a Mancunian who doesn't sound Mancunian because he's lived in London for around 2 decades. So the knowing laugh during that particular bit is, I'm sorry to report, mine. So I feel like one of the undersung sadnesses of Starmer's sort of lurch to the right, I mean, lurch implies that he started off on not the right, but anyway, is that he's made the handful of Labour moderates that aren't actively pro-genocide seem comparatively reasonable. So I'm interested in knowing what brought you down from Manchester to London. I mean, London in many ways, obviously the Manchester of the South, and what keeps you here?
Wow, that's quite a lot to unpack there. That's quite all right. No, that's fine. What brought me down was actually a very specific job offer, which is that back in 2001, I was one of 4 trainees taken on as a trainee comedy producer by the radio comedy department.
Yeah, okay.
We indeed. Very quickly. I know this now, but at the time, at the time I was unemployed, so it was like, well, it's a job, and I should probably take that offer. Where I came unstuck, and I knew this instinctively, but did not have the confidence at that age to maybe push back and sort of say, well, maybe this isn't such a great idea, is that I just wasn't really equipped to deal with it properly, I don't think.
Okay. And
the other 3 trainees were sort of, one of them was already a theatre director, and someone else was had already had experience, and coupled with, I have to say, the management of that department at that time, kind of my relative incompetence met head on with their apathy, and that produced a perfect storm of utter disaster. So a year later, and it was a classic thing. At that stage, I had sold a couple of sketches to BBC Radio, which is the one thing I'd done that the other trainees hadn't.
Yeah,
I think that was part of it. And I do wonder now, as odd as it sounds, whether I might have been a diversity hire, in the sense that
Northern
back then, I guess, having someone from the region was their version of broadening it out. So I wasn't necessarily there for. I always got the impression that HR had more a hand in me being picked than any desire to have me as part of that program. At the time, I was a huge radio comedy fan and starry-eyed and naive, and this should have been a homecoming that year, but turned into an utter disaster by the end of it. So I kind of pinballed out of that into a job in for a very long while, what the station that became Radio 4 Extra.
Okay, yeah.
So I spent a lot of my time listening to a lot of radio output from yesteryear and filling in compliance forms. We occasionally made things, sort of 3-hour specials you get on a Saturday morning. And although that was far less of a responsibility and far less stuff to actually make than being a comedy producer, we were weirdly allowed for a long time a lot more latitude in terms of, because Radio 4 was a digital station, nobody really noticed it, and certainly the rest of the BBC didn't really seem to be paying it much attention. So when I got to make things, I got to write the script and have fun and do that and record in the studio, and I did that for ages. I sort of took voluntary redundancy about 10 years ago, and I've done a variety of things. Continue to do a variety of things since, because I'm not, a star name in comedy, though I have my moments. What keeps me in London is a really good question. Just the feeling of unfinished business, that it kind of had that year of disaster at the start, and that I still have something to prove. And also, it is, after a while, it is where I've spent quite a lot of my life. However I feel about London. And yes, you're right, I kind of prefer Manchester, but at the same time, it's like I've carved out some kind of niche here, and I quite like to survive here as long as. But economic and other factors probably will, force me to move back at some point in the next few years. But for the time being, I think, well, I feel like I don't feel like I'm quite done yet. So, although I've had a few things, minor victories in the time that I've been here, and you have enough of them. One of the obscure pieces of sci-fi is the film version of Slaughterhouse-5, which I don't know if you've ever seen, but there's a line in that, I can't remember if it's in the book. Once you take away the beginning and the end of life, all you're left with are the moments. And it's about, I've realised after a good number of years, it's about having enough of those moments that you can feel good when you go. So I feel like I've still got few more of those to do. It might be that they're not in London. It might be something else happens and I move on somewhere else and that's where it happens. But
Very nice. Lovely. So thanks so much for chatting with me, Declan. That was a lovely chat and a lovely set. If you want to catch up with you, where can they do it? What have you got to plug?
I have nothing to plug. Nada. Zip. Zero. Zilch. I'm not up to anything at the minute. I should be. That's why I haven't progressed much in comedy.
Yeah.
And that might have changed by the time this goes out. But if you want to find me, the best place, I guess, is Facebook. That was where I'll be. If I go on Insta, I'll let people know. But Facebook is your first port of call.
Okay.
And also, I did do, during lockdown, I did do a 3-part sitcom called not a sitcom, podcast called Singularities, which is still out there on Acast, if anybody wants to find it.
Okay, cool.
I'm not going to say too much about that. You'll just have to listen to it.
All right, lovely stuff. Thanks so much, Declan. Lovely chatting to you, and see you in a bit. Bye.
Thank you very much.
That was the Quantum Leopard podcast. If you want to catch a live show in London, look us up at Linktree /Quantum Leopard to sign up to the mailing list. We will never take advertising because advertising is cultural poison, but from each according to their ability to each according to their need. So if you're enjoying our guests in your ears, but would like them in your eyes as well, we have videos of whole shows up on patreon.com/Quantum Leopard. We only charge when a new live show video comes out. If you enjoyed the show, why not give us a 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice and or share this episode on the socials. Editing was by Rhys Lawton, who is conventionally attractive and fun at parties. Music was composed and produced by Rooks Production Services at I Am Rooks on the socials. That's Rooks with an E. The Quantum Leopard podcast is distributed and licensed under a Creative Commons Attribution Non-Commercial No Derivatives 4.0 international license, which means you can share it as much as you like, but don't change it or sell it in any way because I will find out where you live. Kind love and see you soon. Bye.
I forgot to mention as well. I should have mentioned this with the Blake 7 thing. Oh, God, 2 things I forgot to mention. The reason I was going to bring it up is because it has come out on Blu-ray this year with enhanced special effects.
So the thing that you want to plug is Blake 7 on Blu-ray with enhanced special effects. That's what you want to plug?
Yeah, why the hell not?
Cool, fine. Okay, great.
I can't imagine who that is for apart from me and Steve McLean. It must be a tax loss of some kind. I cannot think. If anyone knows Blake 7, they know what a huge Herculean effort it would be to improve every single special effect. But they've gone for it.
Yeah.
Kudos to them. They deserve a plug.